build my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance to spit in his eye. Well, they gave me ball, but I can see between to a dusty yard and a long gone green. They call that freedom, if you know what I mean. And I dry my sorrows, but the whiskey's gone. I'm sober.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Longbangers. I'm Matty, and tonight I'm joined by John. First of all, John, how are you doing tonight?
I'm really good, Matty. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. We recorded a separate podcast this morning. I say this morning, it wasn't this morning at all. It was this evening. It feels like this morning, but we did a wee collaboration with Down the Slope, which is another Hibs podcast, which we would thoroughly recommend. So we'll have that up on Recast later on for you to watch once I get the video file through from the Down the Slope guys. And speaking of Recast, we're also joined by Andy Meikle. I hope I pronounced your surname right, Andy.
Yeah.
That's good. I had there was a guy at school in my year who had Meikle as his surname. He was Alan Meikle. So if I inadvertently call you Alan at any point, I apologize in advance.
I'm not gonna mention it. I'm just gonna let you go, and then you can watch back and see calling Alan.
It's definitely going to happen because you've got previous for getting names wrong.
I get names wrong a lot. Yep. Normally my kids as well. When you're shouting them, you have to go through. I've got 3 kids, and you start with one, and it's normally the third one. By the time you get they're all different genders. They're not all different genders. 2 of them are the same gender. You can't have. Well, I suppose you can now have 3 different genders.
That's true. That's true.
I'm just not going to go there with that one. Right?
Have you asked them what gender they are?
No, I probably won't, John. We'll just move on quickly for that one because that's a whole world of trouble. But even Longbangers, we're not going to get into that. So no Hibs game to talk about tonight. So we're going to talk a wee bit about Recast. Andy's joined us, so we'll find out. Andy, you're a Hibs fan as well, aren't you?
I am. Yeah.
So if we were to ask you to explain Recast or describe Recast to anybody who didn't know what it was, how would you sum it up?
So what we're looking to do really is enable fans to get immediate, personalised, and really importantly, get affordable access to watching any content they want to watch. And of course, at the same time, trying to drive maximum value back to professional athletes, teams, leagues, federations, associations, or even in discussions with broadcasters who are interested in setting up a channel on Recast. So I think that ultimately where this is born out of is that we know that people are increasingly looking at clips and highlights, and they're consuming things on the go, and that's caused a challenge for many of the rights holders, the rights owners, to try to make money. Mm-hmm. And so we've just tried to come up with a model that fits for everybody, and where fans can get affordable access, and the clubs, the players, and the leagues can make money.
And you got Hibs on board kind of fairly early on. So from a football fan's perspective, when I look at Recast, there's 2 sort of notable teams. Well, one notable team and Man City. So there's Hibs and Man City that are on there at the moment. How did you come about getting Hibs on board?
It was an introduction through a friend of mine, and he's friends with Greg that runs marketing and partnerships over at Hibs, and it was just in the new year that Scotty made an introduction and said, I think that Hibs would be interested in hearing more about Recast, and so we had a conversation, and it moved pretty quickly. I mean, the team over at Hibs are superb and completely get the way in which we call them, the consumption and payment patterns are evolving. So they were all over that. And I think that, our model is really unique in the sense that fans can earn credits, our in-app credits, and then spend those to watch the content they want to watch. And of course, for our partners, they're able to monetize that through the in-app earnings. So for Hibs, they really were very forward thinking, off the bat when we started talking to them about why we'd come up with this model, and they were well aware that micropayments is something for the future. And only before Christmas had Man City reached out to us as well, and very quickly the both of them jumped on the platform, and now it's amazing to see all the other clubs that we're now in discussions with. But I'm proud as a Hibs fan that first Scottish club in there.
What's your background with Hibs? Because I know from a bit of prep that we did beforehand that you've kind of travelled a fair bit. So is it, how did you start off as a Hibs fan? How did you come into it?
Yeah, so I mean, my papa, my dad, they're both lifelong Hibs fans, and so I was raised a Hibs fan. Although I grew up in Oman until I was 7 years old, and then Dubai until I was 18. Then I went and lived in the US. I went on a soccer scholarship. I was there for 4 years. London, Dubai. I've sort of been back and forth a bit all over the place, but since I was very small, I was raised a Hibs supporter, and so that's obviously, I mean, that's the beauty of sport and football, right? I mean, you always grow up supporting the team that your family supports, and that was the case with me.
And what was like your sort of your early experiences of watching Hibs?
Russell Latipi, just, total magic. Absolutely loved going to Easter Road. My mum's a big football fan as well, so whenever we'd grown up in Dubai, we would come back to Scotland every 2 summers, and obviously catch the beginning of the season. So if my dad wasn't back with us at that time, then my mum would take me to the games, and she's from Chile. They're very passionate footballers and fans of football over there. So it was always good to go to the game with my mum or my dad. And
Russell Latipi's not a bad player to start your introduction to Hibs as well. Like he's still goes down one as our best ever players. I think anybody who saw him would say the same, John.
I think one of my earliest introductions was Stephen Tweed, so I think Andy definitely got the better end of the stick on that one.
I don't know if I've ever mentioned to you, John, but my wife's cousin is Stephen Tweed.
No way.
And you just slaughtered on the podcast, and I think you and I are going to fall out now.
In my second game at Easter Road, he scored. I was sitting in what was the old cowshed. It's now the famous 5, and it looked like, from my vantage point and my age, it looked like he scored a diving header for about the halfway line. But it must have been. It was probably more likely a stooping header for the 6-yard line.
Aye, there is a bit of a difference between, I suppose, Stephen Tweed and Russell Latipi. Not that you'd be telling if you looked at them.
Small bit.
He just jumps out. I've also got another memory. I remember being right near the sideline, and I just couldn't believe it. I remember this. I can't remember what the decision was, but it was against Hibs, and Big Yogi picked up the ball and came over right in front of me and a few other fans, and was like, "This referee's getting on my tits." And I was like, I can't remember what age I was, but I was like, "Oh my God." I was sitting next to my mum, and I was like, absolutely hilarious. And of course, the crowd was in fits of laughter. And actually, years later, I was on trial with Falkirk, and Russell Latipi came and picked me up and took me to the stadium, and Yogi was the manager at the time, so it was just kind of surreal to have that memory. I never told him, though. I didn't say to him, "By the way, my first memory of you was," but those are good memories still.
You never saw him running about naked. He's got a reputation for that, isn't he?
Was there a video, or was there a bit on like STV News or something of John Hughes running about naked in the background of an interview?
So there was. I'm sure John Hughes did it, but he might have done it at Falkirk, and I can't remember if it was Graham Stack that did it while John Hughes was getting interviewed at the training ground. I might have got that completely wrong, John, which wouldn't be unusual.
No, you might be right. I've definitely got a vivid image of John Hughes running about naked in a news interview.
That's an image you didn't want to have.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one.
Don't have to English.
The things I find on the internet, I tell you.
We had a question on Shortbangers on Thursday night, which was like football shouts or memorable football shouts, and that referee's getting on my tits, but from a player would have been quite a good shout for that question.
Yeah, no, it was pretty funny.
And you living abroad, where are you based at the moment?
I'm based in Edinburgh. Moved to Edinburgh. My wife and kids, we moved back just almost 2 years ago. So I was in Dubai. A previous business was a sports social platform, a platform called Sport Lobster, where fans could get personalised access to stats, news, scores, and make predictions amongst friends. But ultimately, the heart of it was the ability to just chat with other people who shared the same interests as you. But that business was bought out by one of our Dubai-based shareholders, and as part of that, I moved to Dubai to make it more of a Dubai company going global, and spent a couple of years there. And then when I moved away from the business and came up with the concept for Recast, I knew that I had to be back in the UK really to build the business from scratch. And so we made the move a couple of years ago.
And so when you were abroad, if I'm getting my timelines right, you probably would have been abroad when we won the cup.
I was actually living in London at the time.
Uh-huh.
I was living in London at the time, but flew up for the game, and my parents, they flew in from Dubai, and my granddad, my papa, who passed away the year later. The four of us went to the game, so it was such a special day, of course, but particularly to share it with my mum and dad and my granddad as well.
What was the match day routine for that day like? What did you do?
Well, being with my my granddad, who was in his late 80s, it was a bit more, shall we say, subdued than perhaps many others enjoyed that day. But we were just at home and then headed into across to Glasgow, and we got some good seats. We were fortunately in hospitality, so enjoyed a pre-match lunch and met some former players, etc. And then after the game, we just headed back to the house and dropped off my granddad, and then went down to Silverhouse to the golf club and had a few drinks. So it was nothing outrageous compared to a few others. But the next day, was it the next day or the day after? The next day, I did go down to Leith Links and met up with a few pals that had been at the game the day before, and that was a bit more wild than the day before.
It was a good day, the Sunday for the parade.
Yeah.
John, you took a seat home for Hampden, didn't you?
Did you?
I'm doing this room up just now, and I can bring it over, but there's a frame back there, and I don't know. It was I wrote a wee blog about the game afterwards, because it was momentous and it was historic and it was without exaggeration at all, and I wanted a memento of it. Not just like the match ticket. Obviously we saw everyone on the pitch and they're ripping up clumps of turf and goalposts and nets and all that sort of stuff. And just purely through the exuberant celebrations up in the stands, one of the seats in front of me had got broken, and it wasn't fully broken. And I kind of helped it on its way and smuggled it out of Hampden, wrapped in a Hibs flag. Nice. But obviously, like I've smuggled it out, wrapped in his flag, thinking, if anyone, especially the police, see this, I'm going to get it taken off me. I'm going to end up in the jail. But they were distracted by
other things that were going. Yeah, exactly. Other things that were going on. Exactly.
There's one of my regrets is not making it onto the pitch. We were up in the upper tier, I think the south stand at Hampden. So with my levels of fitness, there was absolutely zero chance, unless I fell off the tier, of making it onto the pitch. Like I would have to have gone out downstairs and everything to make it onto the pitch, and by that point, I think everybody was back in the stand. So
I was the same. Like, I don't know if it's standard practice, but I was up above, Sir David Gray corner, if you like. And as soon as the final whistle went, I've gone hearing down some stairs into the sort of concourse area, if you like. And the doors were bolted shut, G4S stewards all there. But like I say, I don't know if that's standard practice or if that's just because of what was occurring.
Yeah.
Close the blast doors. So where do you see Recast going? Like how big do you think it can get?
Well, we're very ambitious with our plans. I mean, we really believe that we're very complementary to the current ecosystem. So the same way that, we understand that there's the likes of Hibs TV, and we're speaking to the FA, they've got FA Player. There's obviously many rights holders who look to still sell their live rights to broadcasters, but there's many tier 2 and tier 3 sports that simply don't. And even when you take tier 1 sports, within that, then you've got different levels. So take the FA, they're interested in Recast because youth matches, and of course then with clubs you've got reserve matches. So for us, we really believe that there's the ability to provide this end-to-end solution for those tier 2 and tier 3 sports to go direct to customer globally, and rather than having to build their own OTT platform and try to put it behind a subscription wall, we have a much more flexible and affordable model for the fans. And so we see ourselves serving those rights owners and rights holders, whilst at the same time enabling tier 1 sports and broadcasters to monetize stuff outside their primary rights, the live stuff, and being able to monetize clips and highlights. And the level of interest we're getting across the world, I mean, it's fascinating to see even who's approaching us, not just us approaching them. I've mentioned Man City that approached us, but also we're in discussions with the likes of Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, through to World Rugby and all sorts. And And we truly are offering up a solution to them and their fans for them to connect. And we're currently in the UK only, but we couldn't be global soon enough because everybody naturally wants to get as big a reach as possible. And even Hibs have been feeding that back to us. They say that they've been seeing and hearing that the Hibs fans around the world are like when's Recast going to be available in Australia? When's it going to be available in the US? So that's something that we're working on accelerating through at the moment.
It's definitely something we've heard, John. Like it's, I mean, it sounds metal because we're like a tiny wee podcast. In the grand scheme of things, neither here nor there. But there was one of the first bits of feedback we got when we said we were going to be putting some stuff exclusively on Recast was, well, we can't see it. We're not in the UK, so it'll be great when it goes global. And there's a benefit to have. So obviously, you were talking about monetizing it, but from a Hibs fan's perspective, the difference between watching it on a bit of content on YouTube or watching it on Recast is that presumably the Hibs make more money from Recast.
Yeah, that's precisely it. The way in which the model works, if they were to put the content on YouTube, then of course, there's often pre-roll or mid-roll ads, but the value is often going directly from the advertiser and skipping straight over us, the consumer, even though we're being targeted, it's intrusive to our experience, etc. And the vast majority is going to YouTube, for example, rather than, let's say, Hibs or anybody else who's putting content up on the platform. So we flip that on its head, and we drive 85% of the value goes to the content publishers, and all for the other percentage, the 15%, we're covering the costs for the hosting, the playback, everything is all covered there. So it's for those who are publishing, including yourselves. I mean, it's fantastic to see the way you're using it, and I love the fact that you're sharing the earnings with the club, and totally get the way in which this all works, and the reason why we built it the way that we have, and that you're exploiting that, and that's what's so important. I think that when fans start to understand and see the way that the model works, then they have the freedom of choice of being able to put a tenner, let's say, onto their Recast wallet and chip away at that, spending 2 credits here, 10 credits there, watching content, or they have the freedom, of course, of earning those credits when they share videos, when they post videos, when they watch ads, etc. So they've got complete control over that, but at least they can take comfort in knowing that the value is going to the club or going to yourselves, whoever the publisher is. They're supporting them, and in reality, that's the way things should work, right? It's fair. We often talk about transparency and fairness, and that's what we're very confident that we're achieving at the moment.
It's really reassuring because I suppose we get asked, John, sometimes that folk ask us how they can support us. So some podcasts you can go on Patreon, for example, you pay a subscription, or set up like a GoFundMe or a PayPal account for people to make donations.
Yeah.
For me, when we looked at Recast, I thought it was brilliant the fact that we could get people to support us, and then in turn we can support Hibs with that money. And it doesn't cost them anything. Like you say, they've got that total choice. They could fund it, or go and watch an advert, or share a video, and that just kind of tops up their wallet, and they can kind of repeat that process. It's really cool. Really like that. I really like the ability to fund Hibs with it as well. Which is what we're about. We're Hibs fans, and the more we can direct money to the club, the better. I know it's not big potatoes at the moment, but it'll get there, I'm sure.
That's the thing. I mean, for each channel, that's what we call it, right? So for your channel, for the Hibs channel, at least they can start making more per view because they're setting the price. You're setting the price per view, and we often say that. So we get asked the question, what kind of content should we put on? And we're like, and we stress the point that this is your channel. It's up to you. If you want to put clips and highlights, behind the scenes, interviews, etc., then do that. And if you want to post 1 video a year, then do that. But you're obviously not going to make much money. If you want to charge an obscene amount per view, then you're not going to make much money. So it becomes self-sustaining, and we're here with our early partners. We're in beta at the moment to help establish what the sensible price points are and what people are willing to how they're willing to engage with the platform, what they're willing to do to earn those credits. And everybody's different, and that's what's fascinating so far, because you've got some people that are like, I love the fact that I can just put a tenner on my wallet and just spend it whenever I want. And you've got other people that absolutely love the fact that they can just engage and watch content for free which they can do on YouTube, but as we touched on, they know that value is going to yourselves or to Hibs, and people are more they want that to happen. It's only right, it's only fair, because otherwise, how are the clubs and the leagues, etc., going to survive? It's, you know, there's a challenge if everybody's getting something for free, then where's the money coming from? You know,
somebody misses out.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
What you mentioned before there, Andy, was about people coming to you asking, well, what content should we put out? What are the clubs restricted in putting out in terms of the other agreements that they have with, say, Sky, BT Sport, Scotland, say, Sports Scene, for example? So could Hibs, for example, upload highlights of goals from the game that they've just played that day? Or would that be restricted?
Yeah, so every club or the different clubs, different leagues, etc., are going to have different restrictions. So some of them, I know that Man City, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is for Hibs, but I know Man City have to wait 6 hours. And even they were saying it used to be 72 hours, and then it was 48 hours, 24 hours, now it's 6 hours. So, you know, it's only going in one direction, because they know that people are scouring the internet trying to find that content anyway. So you might as well get out ahead and deliver that content and it coming from the official provider. But then the challenge is how are they monetize at the moment? So every partner is different. They've got to work to the restrictions, let's call them, based on their existing licensing and rights deals. But what we are also encouraging, and this is what the conversations we're already having with some of the broadcasters, is that you've got these athletes, these teams that have got a following on social media. Why not enable them to post that clip sooner rather than later? And even the same way that you're tagging Hibs and sharing the earnings, by all means, tag, if the match was on BT Sport or Sky Sports, tag BT Sports or Sky Sports and share 20%, 50% of the earnings with them, and at least be the first to distribute. Our platform will give them quick access to that, and everybody's making more incremental value rather than people just finding it elsewhere and nobody's making any value. And the way in which our model works means that there's incentivized sharing. So if I see something from Hibs and I share that to my followers, if any of them don't follow Hibs but they follow me and they decide to view the content, then I get some of the credits that have been generated for the club because I've referred that viewer. Now they determine the percentage, and you guys will have seen that in setting the rules around your content. But we often talk. Last week I had a call with both with the chief digital officer at Paris Saint-Germain and also Liga, their digital team over there, and I'm like, you guys have got one of the most followed athletes on the planet. You know, Neymar's got 140 million followers. How are you making use of that to make money for the club and for the league? And they're like, well, not really. And so this is where they could just stick the clip on, and they could tag whoever the broadcaster is, for example, and the league and the team. And Neymar can just hit one button and they're all making much more value in the space of hours than they currently do at the moment, which is next to nothing.
It's really cool. We obviously have been encouraging people to consume our podcast on Recast for that very reason. I think it's a good model. I think it's as a producer, content producer, it feels right. And like I said before, I love the fact that we can distribute it to Hibs. You know, that we get some, Hibs get some, and like you say, everybody's kind of winning from it.
Absolutely.
If we move on, we have no Hibs match to talk about. There have been a couple of kind of key matches this week that are probably worth mentioning, because we talked about it on Short Bangers, John, didn't we? Which was Dora Rangers beating Hearts in the Cup, which was a hilarious thing to happen.
It got a brief mention.
I think we had about 50% of Short Bangers that went to the laughing at Hearts. But the good thing is, what you can always rely on Hearts is, you know, you have a bit of a laugh at them, and then they'll follow it up and. In this case, give us something else to laugh at, which was getting beat by Queen of the South at the weekend as well, after a wee protest. So that was good. Normally what we would do here is play some sad music over some posts from Hearts fans, but I've not prepared anything in advance, so we'll maybe keep that for Short Bangers, John. I thought it would be a good time for us anyway to look at the season that's passed, because we're now just reached the split. Yeah. We're sitting comfortably in third. So John, I'll come to you first. So what will look for you is your highs, your lows, and a memorable moment from the season.
Oh, you throw me a curveball there with a memorable moment.
You've struggled this season for it, I would think.
I think lows probably the period over Christmas where we had those 3 defeats on the spin and everything just looked really, really gloomy. Highs, probably, there's probably not been like an absolute peak, like a really standout moment. It's almost been like just a slow, steady burn to where we are now. So I'd say if it was a high, if you wanted to call it that, I'd say progress from where we were not too long ago, second bottom of the league, and now we're sitting third top. Memorable moments. This is going to sound a bit daft, but I think I talked about it a couple of weeks ago where I think Nisbet, when he got his goal against Ross County, when we came from behind to win for the first time. It's really, really hard this year because we're not at the ground. We're not in games. We're not, whether it's Dingwall, whether it's Easter Road, New Douglas Park, wherever it happens to be, we're just not in the ground. And it was a moment that had me out of my chair. Like watching it in the house, as daft as that sounds. But it was the closest I felt to being at the ground was Nisbet scoring that goal, because it was, I think as well, because of the context of the league standings at the time. We were in the hunt for third place, and we'd had that sort of like uppy down period of just maybe like a game or two. And I remember a comment on Twitter from a guy saying people talking about the game against Ross County, the game in hand, as being as if it's already won.
Aye.
And I don't think there's many people amongst the Hibs support would say, right, we're going to go up to Dingwall and win. So the fact that we did go up there and win was huge, and obviously like it's sort of having us look that a little bit further ahead for the final 6 games. 5 games, sorry.
5 games now, yeah. What about you, Andy? What was highs and lows and memorable moment?
I mean, for me, probably the low would be getting beaten in the League Cup semi-final. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And probably, I don't know. I think similar to what you're saying there, John. I just, in terms of highs, I think like the big result against Aberdeen in February, and that kind of, like you're saying, to go into the break now is with that gap puts us in a really strong position. But I can't really sort of put my finger on a single moment where I've not really had many moments round about the living room feeling like I was in stadium. So it's hard to put my finger on a specific memorable moment though. But I think overall it's pretty interesting, like what you're saying there, because it's been sort of one of those seasons that's, there's been nothing necessarily like outstanding, but to find that we're in the position that we're in also, gives us that sort of, I don't know, so much more confidence, and imagine what it would be like, make a few more signings, and hopefully we'll see that from the club, and then, see how strong we could be next season. So considering that there's been not necessarily outstanding performances, and yet to be in the position that we are, I think is what, as a whole, I'm pretty excited about.
It's a funny old season, eh? I think like not being at the games, that's my low, would be not being at a single game.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Like that, out of everything, because I thought the semi-finals, and I'll include the Scottish Cup semi-final, although that technically that was last season. Both the semi-finals were pretty dire. John, totally agree with you that wee spell in December was pish. Like that was it was as grim as it gets. That
I would try to be eloquent in my description.
There's no need for that. It was that's being kind as well. But not being there to have a good old moan about it, or try to affect the score with encouraging the team or whatever, that is by far and away the biggest low for me. For the highs, the emergence of Josh Doig, I think, has probably been a good thing for us. Having players like McGinn's got into the Scotland squad.
Yeah,
O'Hanlon's been in the Scotland squad. This season, wasn't it?
Easy to forget, like just those wee moments, aye.
So seeing players kind of progressing like that, Scott Allen coming back from his health scare, and obviously he's gone out on loan now, but there are highs there to find. It's just, I suppose it's not the usual highs, and memorable moments are difficult. Thinking maybe Doig equalising against Rangers. We took the lead against them when they hadn't conceded a goal against anybody else. So we were the first team to score against them, and then came from behind with Deutsch to get the equaliser at Easter Road. Had we been at the ground, that would have been a pretty memorable game.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to pick one. And the funny thing is, on Twitter today, there was a reference to 40 years ago, and it was 40 years today when Lennon had the square goal with Jim Duffy at the Morton game, which was a shite game as well. So 0-0, and into the last minute, one of the Morton players, I think it's David Gray, wipes out right in the dugout.
It's funnily enough, I saw the picture today and I thought, I don't remember David Gray getting cleaned out by the Morton player, and it's because it was Jordan Forster.
Was it?
Yep.
So what I remember is there being because it was a bad tackle, but it wasn't terrible. But then McGregor's come steaming in. The boy's going down like he's been shot, pretending he's been headbutted. And then the next thing, it's like the mother of all Rammies kicking off on the touchline. And then, I don't know if you remember Lennon's press conference after it.
I don't remember this.
Where it was just like, he says, yeah, so what if it come to blows? He says, Jim Duffy, yeah, their manager offered me a square goal. And if he wants a square goal, he can have one. He's like,
I do remember that actually. No,
he's like, I'm not going to back down. He was wanting to fight everybody.
Yeah.
And when you watch this Smash, like he definitely wasn't holding back. He wasn't one of those ones that you sometimes see where they're like, hug me back.
He's actually
had to be held back.
He was genuinely pushing folk out the way.
Aye.
Yeah. You didn't get that with Jack Ross. You know, and I suppose probably a good thing all in, but you know, we went in 2017. We wouldn't have had far to go for memorable moments. I think that's the difference between being at the games and not being at the games. Is that was a crap game, but it was memorable. Like, I mean, that was chaos.
Yeah. I think that's key, isn't it? That's key, not being at the ground. Like, I think I was reading a thread on Hibs.net today, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but he was talking about the impact of not being at games, and it occurred to me that watching the games as we are, it's almost like watching football in its sort of purest form, like just guys down the park.
Totally.
And you don't get any of that crowd atmosphere. So talking about the Ross County game that I mentioned before, if you're at the game and Hibs get that quick goal back, and you've got third place at stake, and you know the fans are singing, they're urging the team on. Absolutely. That changes the whole perspective of the game. You're not talking about performances; you're talking about the end result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's just, you can never ever replicate that at home. You know, you can get. I was going to say you can get close because I felt close, but it's not the same. Especially that that moment of, I think someone's described it before recently as well. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it's that moment, that hush just before the crowd explodes, and then suddenly you're hugging people, and it's, you know, bodies falling over bodies. Yeah. I want that back desperately.
Yeah.
How do you think we could recreate that at home, John?
Just get people in. Get 20,000 people in the living room.
Yeah, exactly.
How much drink do you think you'd have to take before it felt the same?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I watch the games with my 3-year-old boy, and what that actually means is I watch them on my own, because he lasts about 5 minutes and then he just walks out.
Yeah.
So yeah, even the game last week, when we scored, although after that howler, of course, at from Porteous, but when we scored, I was obviously pleased about it, but just looking about, sitting on my own, and like you're saying, you're just a bit like, but if you're at the ground, then you would just start celebrating with the person next to you you've never met in your life before.
What's weird is I think you feel grumpier. Like, I feel grumpier after a bad result when I've watched it on the TV than if I was at the game. But I didn't feel quite as high when we win. It's a weird thing, that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I felt like that even after the draw the other day. I mean, and it cost me 20 quid, and I had to sign up to Livingston TV.
Oh, how many logins do you think you're going to have for the different clubs? I mean, it'll be a maximum of 11. I couldn't tell you my username or passwords for any of them.
Do you see the thing the lower league teams are doing, where they've got the technology that follows the ball, so they don't have a cameraman. They have a camera that kind of works out where the ball is. But it's not clever enough to differentiate between the ball and a bald-headed linesman. And this was evidence. But who was the game? Was it Stirling or East Fife maybe? And basically the action would be happening at one end of the pitch, and all of a sudden the camera would just ignore it and zoom in on the linesman.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I should actually say that my most memorable moment is announcing the partnership with Hibs, really, for Recast. That should be my most memorable moment for the season.
we edit this bit out and go back.
Go back. Yeah, my most memorable moment. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, that was a very proud moment for me. And you can imagine my old man was over the moon, and others in the family, and some of my pals as well. Absolutely delighted with it. So that's definitely my most memorable moment for the season.
We were saying to take advantage, John. You want to ask a question, and then I'll come in.
I was just going to ask, because I can be a little bit of a fanboy when it comes to anything Hibs. So when we've had Graham Mathey, Calvin Charlton, Lewis Stevenson recently, have I missed any of the big names out, Matty?
Nah, you weren't on the Bartley White episode, were you?
No. Well, he's not Hibs anymore, so he doesn't count.
He's won the Scottish Cup. Johnny Kent's is still a Hibby.
So I turn out a wee bit of fanboy with him. It almost takes me a little minute to sort of warm up to the conversation and start asking questions. So what was it like for you as a Hibs fan going into Hibs to pitch your product to them? Were you cool, calm and composed, or were you a little bit edgy?
No, I think I was, to be honest, I've been doing the same presentation 2, 3, 4 times a day for months. So you kind of just sort of go into auto drive and go through the presentation. But naturally, I was saying to Greg, I was like, listen, I can't tell you how many times I've watched that winning goal at the cup final on YouTube. You're not making any money. And I was like, so, I'd be happy to pay, 50p every time I viewed it, for example, and I knew that was going to the club or whatever the price would be. And so when, and to be fair, then Greg brought on the next call. Ron Gordon was on the call, and we spent almost 2 hours just talking about all sorts, but obviously Recast primarily. And the same, that for me, I just kept coming back to that goal and that moment and saying, like, I want, when I watch those highlights, those clips, those goals, I want the value to go to the club. So no, I think I was okay.
So Ron's got a media background, doesn't he? Is that expertise that you can tap into to help Recast?
So Ron was like, I'm a bit of a dinosaur with this stuff these days, and so his background definitely is media, but he's like, he completely appreciates that things are moving very quickly, and he appreciates the model, totally understood it, and as well getting the nod from others in the team. They've got a fantastic team over there, and I know that they're investing more into the team, behind the scenes as well. And so yeah, everybody was on board, but I think that he certainly got it, but I think that's where he made his money, and now I think he's focused on putting his money into the Hibs, and hopefully we can help with that as well.
We put the goal on. We put the goal on Twitter. That was this morning when I was getting frustrated at various things at work, which I probably can't go into on the podcast. I was like, I need a wee distraction, so I went on Twitter and said, "Has anybody got a clip of David Gray's goal at Hampden?" And then that's literally kind of got 3 or 4 videos straight away. The folk posting it, and it takes you back. As soon as you watch it, you get a wee buzz. Love watching the goal. Could see it just on a loop, and it would do me.
Here's a question. Could we take one of those videos and put it onto Recast and help direct money towards Hibs?
So I don't think
be any rights issues with that?
We're not the rights holders for it, John, so I don't think we could.
Yeah. I'm just going to say you shouldn't do that. If you do, make sure you tag the club and share it. No, like, to be fair, so like fans can post their own fan videos, right? So we keep those videos to less than 30 seconds long. So unless you're verified, like Longbangers is, for example, and the club is, professional athletes, etc. And that's something actually to your point, John. So you're asking about. There's any nerves. There might be. So Greg over at Hibs is setting up a Zoom for me to the end of training one day. All the players are going to go into a room, and I'm going to be up on the big screen doing a Zoom, and I'm going to present to all the players, because at the end of the day, the players should all be on there as well, and using it and promoting it, etc. So maybe a couple of nerves, a few nerves there, but it's the point I was getting to is for the athletes, the teams, etc. They're verified, so they can post longer form content. But for the fans who are not official content partners, they can post their videos as well, but they have to be less than 30 seconds long. They technically can't post anything longer than that. And we've been speaking to, everybody that we speak to, they say, so what if they're 20-second clip is actually a goal. And we say, well, look, if you're the rights owner and you want to report that, we will remove it. But ultimately, the fan's just making some credits that they're going to spend on watching the official content anyway. So the value is going into your pocket eventually.
Yeah.
And if they're going to stay up on Instagram or YouTube or Twitter, you're chasing your tail trying to remove it. So just enable them, accommodate them, and let them just stick those clips onto Recast, earn their credits, and then the value go back to the club, the league, and of course the broadcasts, they're tagged, etc., etc. So yeah, we have got that functionality in place, and nobody's so far. I mean, take Major League Baseball; they're the most protective globally of their rights, and they absolutely love the fact that the fans can earn from their short clips because they're going to spend that back on Major League Baseball content one day. So
I suppose it creates the buzz as well, doesn't it? You know, if the more stuff that there is to watch, the more you want to watch, and the bigger it gets, and that kind of thing. It's
yeah, exactly,
an upward spiral. To coin a Tony Mowbray phrase. We've got just to wrap up. Then next game isn't until a week.
Yeah,
a week today.
Yeah, that's right.
Queen of the South in the Cup. So we need to be careful because we've all pissed ourselves laughing at Hearts losing to Queen of the South.
Totally.
And then you realise we play them next, and you're just like, bollocks. We all know what's going to come for that. John, do you want to be bold enough to give us a prediction for it?
I'm going to say Hibs will win 2-0.
Nice one. And who's scoring?
Martin Boyle and Christian Doidge, now that he's off the mark again.
Doidge will definitely score. Definitely. Andy, what about you? How do you think it will go?
Oh, I was just about to say, I was thinking actually before, I was like, I reckon it could be like a 3-0 or 3-1. But now you've put the fear in me because of what you've just said. So maybe I'll play it safe. But I'll definitely a win, but I might go 1-0.
1-0 scorer.
Doidge as well, yeah.
Doidge.
Yeah.
I think we'll scrape through. I think we'll come close, but because we're better than Hearts, and we are better than Hearts, I think we will.
You're such a pessimist.
I'm saying we're going to win.
Let's go out there then. Should we say like 5-0? We're going to absolutely batter them. No, don't say
that. Yeah. I think 2-1. I think it'll be 1. We'll be 1-0 down, and then we'll come back and win 2-1.
Oh man,
2 goals to Doidge. He's getting both of them.
You're going backwards, Matty. What's happening?
I don't know. We're going through it. Actually, John, have a wee fancy for us to win the cup this year.
Yeah.
I think because we had the 2 shocking semi-finals, we've had that bit of pain, and I think Rangers will fancy themselves for it.
So you mentioned it before about watching football on the TV just now. The pain of a defeat is greater than how you feel after a victory, and I think that's par for the course every time. And think of the heartache that we had probably from about 2010 onwards, 2010 up till 2016, maybe even slightly before 2010, all erupting in the 92nd minute.
Yeah.
you have to have that, the pain, that heartache, that level of heartache before
you've got to go through it. It's no Hibs if you have in fact, it's no football if you've not been through that the agony before you get the ecstasy.
Exactly.
So I've got a wee fancy that we're going to do it this year. I wouldn't put money on it because, I would be the biggest jinx ever. Fancy we're going to do it. I fancy we'll play Celtic in the final. I think Rangers think they're going to win it because they've been good this season. I think they're going to get knocked out, not by Celtic, but by another. We'll beat Celtic in the final.
Honestly, see if these predictions come true, I'm going to start calling you Paul the Octopus. Do you remember him during the World Cup a few years back?
Did the score predictions?
Yeah. Wasn't there the next, whatever tournament was next, did they not have a different animal that they then used instead of the...
I think that one was shit.
Was
I think they gave up on
it
it quite quick.
Exactly. Because it was, I can't remember what it was.
It was like the animal version of Uri Geller, just absolutely hopeless and clinging on to one that they got right years ago. I'm sure Uri Geller did something to move that boat in the Suez Canal, didn't he? He tried to get everybody to put their mindset at the back of 11 the other night, and that didn't do well.
Asking them to channel their energy.
It just all you needed to do was wait, because eventually it was going to move. It's just a matter of time, and if you timed that right, you could pretend you'd influenced it. Anyway, I think we would be talking about that. Right, Hibs for the Cup. I think that's us.
Hibs for the Cup.
Andy, thanks very much for joining us tonight. It's been,
thanks for having me, guys.
Really good. Best
really
of luck with Recast. Obviously, we hope.
Thank you, and thanks for you guys' support as well. Delight to see you guys on there. Really appreciate it.
I know, boy. John, thanks for your time tonight as well. And thanks everybody for listening, and we will catch you next time. Makes the bone on a dry
county line I pledged upon. Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee. I don't